To do this worksheet, one of the first things you have to do is to type in this information and make a scatterplot chart. And I've realized after going around the class that just typing in this information was a challenge to a lot of kids. So let's first take a look at how I did this. If I just copy and paste, so you don't have to watch me retype all of this, you will notice that this is three separate things. And to get these all into one cell, I'd highlight all three of the things it spans across and click this button for merge and center. Okay, so that's going to make this into one cell instead of three separate cells. For things like my gauging station and these other two, when you try and type them in, they don't turn all nice looking like mine does, and that really bothers some people. So let's see what I did to fix that. For example, my estimated mean here, I just went up to the top. There's a thing called text wrapping, or wrap text, and that will let all of the text, instead of going off to the side, wrap around inside, so it takes multiple lines. And I said, okay, well this looks nice now, but this looks kind of weird. So I'm going to highlight all three of these. I'm going to say that I want those all to be centered, and I want them in the middle. Okay, and then the rest of it, you can probably figure out. Instead of it just being here, so it normally is, I said I wanted it centered in the cell instead, and this was exactly how it was. So let's just pretend like this is what I started with. I'll scroll down and we can forget about the fact that we have other stuff up above it. Now you may notice that all of my numbers are different than your numbers. I want this to be an example. I don't want you to copy down what I have. So follow with the method. Don't worry if your numbers are different. So the first thing I have to do is I highlight these two columns. I go up to Insert. I'm making a scatter plot. I'm going to pick the first option, Scatter with Markers, and it's going to put all my little blue markers in. At the top I have Layout. I'm going to click Trend Line, and at the bottom more Trend Line options. I want to forecast backward 5, display the equation, and display the r² value. I'm going to move this so I can see it a little nicer. And also I would kind of like my axis titles over here. To get my axis titles, it's here. And I want to see my vertical rotated and my horizontal down below the axis. I'm going to pause just for 1 second so I can see what these are supposed to be. I'm going to change this title, so if I double click it, I should be able to kind of delete what was in there and type in average annual runoff in inches. If I highlight this, I can type in estimated annual rainfall in inches. And the actual title should be runoff versus rainfall. I'll move this up here, and let's take a look at a couple of your other questions. So after you get the chart, you're supposed to print this out, and you're going to mark up this page. But it also asks you a couple of things. So would you describe the relationship between the average annual runoff and the estimated annual rainfall to be a strong correlation, weak correlation, or neither? And we know the closer it is to 1, the stronger it is. So mine is 0.92, and again I have different numbers than you do, so check yourself and see if that looks about right. The closer this is to 1, the more related they are. So for me, I have a strong correlation. It's very close to 1. And it says use a mathematical model to rewrite the equation of the trend line using function notation. So here is my equation of the trend line. This is really difficult when the computer's slow. Trendline equation. On the original one is y is equal to 0.6185x minus 1.5907. Function notation. And they ask you to use R of W and W. You're going to put in R of W in place of Y. .6185 W in place of X. So again, my numbers are different. These numbers should be different, but this is the method you will use. So that answers part A off of 2. The domain of the function. Let's take a look at this real quick. If I want the domain, it's all of the x values that make sense. And for me to know where the x values start, I have to predict where this line would cross this axis. So that's the X-Intercept is what I'm trying to find. And to find the X-Intercept, I plug in 0 for y. So I say 0 is equal to 0.6185 W minus 1.5907. I would add 1.5907 to either side. And then I would divide by 0.6185. Let's see if I have a calculator close by. There you are, calculator. I would take 1.5907, divide that by my 0.6185 to get 2.57. So the domain would be equal to all real numbers that are greater than or equal to 2.57. So it's taking whatever this intercept was and saying everything that's there and forward makes sense for x. For my range, this is going to be equal to all of my y values that make sense. Does it make sense to have 0 or less than 0 average annual runoff? No. 0 is the lowest we could possibly go. So we would say all real numbers that are greater than or equal to 0. So you're saying if I pick any point on here, we can continue to have y values up and up and up, as bad as the hurricanes are, but we can't have below 0. So there would eventually be some kind of a limit. We wouldn't be able to continue on forever past 0. But for now, this is our range and this is our domain. And I might even move that down here. Okay. But I want you to see this is how we got the domain. This is how we figured that it's going to be greater than or equal to 2.57 because that was the X-Intercept. And the way we find X-Intercept, we plug in 0 for y in this equation. Okay. What is the domain? What is the range? What is the slope of your trend line? The slope of my trend line is, if this is slope-intercept form, my slope it's going to be 0.6185. And that is a comparison of average runoff to average rainfall. meaning as rainfall increases, runoff increases. So this should make sense. The more that it rains, the more runoff we're going to have. Okay? So when it says explain the interpretation of the slope in words, this is what they're looking for. Then it says estimate the annual runoff amount if the annual rainfall amount is 54 inches. So, if runoff is 54 inches, this means R of 54 is equal to 0.6185 times 54 minus 1.5907. So my R of 54 would be equal to, let me pull my calculator back up, what do we say, 0.6185 times 54 is equal to 33.399. We're going to subtract off the 1.5907 and find that it's 31.8. What did I say again? 31.8. Okay. It also asks if the annual runoff amount was 11.5 inches, estimate the annual rainfall that led to that much of a runoff. So if we had 11.5 inches of runoff, how much rainfall was there? We'd take 11.5 and set that equal to my 0.6185 times some amount W minus my 1.5907. So I would add to each side and say 11.5 plus 1.5907 is 13, and then I would divide each side by 0.6185. And I would say that W is probably equal to 2.21. Okay, and that would answer all of the first part.